On Saturday, November 8, 2025, amongst other candidates, 4 prominent gladiators will be making a mark in the Anambra political arena. The economist-in-chief, incumbent governor Professor Chukwuma Charles Soludo of APGA, billionaire-industrialist Prince Nicholas Ukachukwu of the APC, coalition outsider John Chuma Nwosu of the ADC, and reformist technocrat George Moghalu of the Labour Party. First, the economist-turned-governor Professor Chukwuma Charles Soludo of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, a man who has walked the corridors of global finance, now walking the streets of Awka. He calls his mission the Soludo Solution Phase 2. Smart cities, industrial clusters, healthcare renewal, modern schools, and a digital Anambra. His message is simple. We have begun. Let us finish. Now, backed by incumbency and the APGA machinery and endorsements from even oppositions alike, Soludo stands as a man to beat. Next up will be Prince Nicholas Ukachukwu, fondly called Ikukwoma, a billionaire-industrialist and empire builder from Nnewi South. He wears the colors of the All Progressives Congress, the APC. Now, his vision: industrial parks, grassroots mobilization, and also jobs for the restless youth of Anambra. His wild card, ultimately, a public blessing from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, promising a federal handshake, or rather a promising federal handshake and resources for Anambra's leap. Then comes Chief George Moghalu of the Labour Party, former managing director of the National Inland Waterways, NIWA, a man seasoned in public service. He speaks of competence, fiscal discipline, and infrastructure catch-up. His campaign, draped in green-red Labour flags, draws strength from one towering figure, of course, Peter Obi. With Obi's blessings and the obedience energy, he carries momentum, yet a fresh court order restrains his candidacy, clouding his path. Still, Moghalu insists the people will have their choice. Will the courts or the crowds decide his fate? Food for thought. And there is John Chuma Nwosu of the African Democratic Congress, the coalition outsider, the voice of a smaller party actually, yet carrying a message that resonates: clean governance, anti-corruption, tech-driven jobs, and citizen oversight. Without the massive machinery of the big three which I have just mentioned, the APC, the APGA political party, and also the Labour Party, he leans on the grassroots networks and coalition allies. His vision to prove that even in Anambra, the small can challenge the mighty, and his chances probably may be slim, but his voices keeps the fire of democracy within the light of the nation alive. Each with a vision, each with a claim, we unveil the promises, the manifestos, the power, and the politics of Anambra on Viewpoints, where we discover perspectives and embrace dialogue. I'm Odiawa AI. Join us shortly.
The official commissioning of this solution market Ekulobia and the solution park Ekulobia. Okay? The official commissioning here. A park like no other here in the state. Massive with all the facilities. And here.
You're welcome back to the show. Now, the destiny of the light of the nation, Anambra State, will once again be tested at the polls come November 8, 2025. Looking at the 4 prominent candidates, their manifestos, and how influential they have been in Anambra politics, Professor Charles Soludo with the Soludo Solution Phase 2. Might we recall the first tenure was of Phase 1 of the Soludo Solution. Now we have the Soludo Solution Phase 2, which is the next Anambra. The journey that began actually 3 years ago, which now seeks a second wind. The vision called, like I said, the Soludo Solution Phase 2 is not just a policy here. It is a promise, his manifesto, a promise of smart cities, of industrial clusters, of renewed healthcare, of modern schools, and of a digital Anambra. Now, picture Awka or Onitsha or Nnewi no longer choked with traffic, but flowing like the veins of a living organism, with the roads broadened, flyovers which are actually rising, street lights powered by solar energy. Now also not excluding, imagine water running freely, waste that is managed, and housing that matches the dignity of the people. Now, this is the smart city dream which Soludo is actually selling, along with markets with digital payment systems, streets safe with cameras and patrols, parks where children can actually breathe and also play. Now, Governor Soludo speaks of a connected urban future, and Oka transformed into a true capital, Onitsha as a 24-hour trading hub, Nnewi as an industrial dynamo. Smart cities mean more than buildings, if you will agree. They mean governance that is efficient, data-driven, and transparent. Now, in phase 2, the promise is clear. Anambra will not remain a state of villages and towns, but a state of cities, which, of course, with modern and green and digital appearances. Now, from Nkwo Nnewi to the lines of Onitsha, the sound of commerce has always been the heartbeat of Anambra, but Soludo's phase 2 calls for more industrial clusters, planned zones where factories thrive, power is steady, and logistics are seamless. Now imagine now, picture this now, where Onitsha with its own inland ports, and Nnewi Auto City, and Ukolobia Agro Park, each humming with jobs, innovation, and exports. This is not just fantasy now, it's actually a blueprint which is actually selling to the people of Anambra. But in these clusters, small traders apparently might metamorphose into manufacturers. Apprentices will become entrepreneurs. The vision is to turn Anambra into production powerhouse, if you will agree. A state no longer consuming, but it actually consumes more than it creates, but exports goods across Africa. Jobs for the restless youth, prosperity for families. The clusters will be the engines that carry Anambra to its economic freedom. But what is prosperity, might I ask, without health? A strong body will build the nation of Anambra. But if we look at it in phase 2, Soludo pledges healthcare renewal also, which is one of his manifestos, which is selling this 2025. Modernized hospitals, well-equipped primary centers, affordable insurance for the vulnerable. Now imagine no mother traveling miles to deliver safely. No child dying due to lack of oxygen. No youth actually lost his or her life why he couldn't treat malaria. Now, his vision is simple. Healthcare within 30 minutes of every Anambra citizen, or for every Anambra citizen. Now, new general hospitals in strategic zones, expanded health insurance schemes, recruitment of nurses, doctors, and community health workers, partnerships with diaspora to bring expertise back home. Now, it is a promise that the wealth of the state will not be measured only in naira, but in lives saved and children healed, not forgetting the elderly. The future of the child is in the classroom. These were words of Soludo during one of his campaign train. Phase 2 envisions modern schools that do not only teach to pass exams, but schools that prepare leaders for tomorrow. Now, this is a resounding echo we've been hearing right from the days of childhood. But how effective is this mantra going to be factualized in this manifesto is what we want to wine and dine about. Now, smart classrooms with digital tools, teachers retrained, motivated, and respected. Curriculums updated for science, technology, and engineering alongside arts. Vocational centers where skills will meet opportunity. Now, also, picture this. Imagine a world where every child in Anambra learns coding alongside arithmetic, entrepreneurship alongside literature. This is a new promise to turn classrooms into incubators of greatness. Now, how greatly will they be actualized now is a rhetorical question now we need to ask ourselves and to the people of Anambra. In phase 2, also not leaving out the community, they will not be left behind as rural schools will be upgraded, urban schools expanded, partnerships with churches, private sector, and also alumni networks. Now, not to deviate, might we recall in a previous write-up, there have been agitations towards the rotation basis for who is actually going to clinch the #1 seat of Anambra, whether it's actually from a Catholic or an Anglican or also from the Anambra South or the Anambra West or Central. Either as it made the #1 seat is what they actually vie for. Finally, the dream of a digital Anambra, a state where government services are online, where business permits are processed within a day, not months. Bureaucracy will actually be put in the trash can, or delays in bureaucracy, where broadband spreads like light across the villages and the young innovators build apps in Colombia that compete with apps from Silicon Valley. In phase 2, the digital inclusion becomes the bridge between the rich and the poor, the urban and the rural, if we'll agree from this selling point of Soludo. Now imagine farmers checking market prices on their phones, be literate enough before the harvest. Imagine artisans selling their crafts online. Imagine tax collection that is transparent, eliminating corruption. Now, this is the meaning of the digital Anambra, which is actually professing efficiency, innovation, and opportunity for all. This is the canvas of the Soludo Solution Phase 2. Now, moving on to the next stop of the manifesto on the list is the Chukwuma vision, Anambra Rising.
Anyị ekwerewo n'Ukachukwu gachi agbachalịkalịka Ukachukwu gachi ndị ọzọ gbachalịkalịka ikuku ọma gachi amara m na ọ ga-adịkọlụ ebube unu ekwerewo n'Ukachukwu gachi
Among the contenders stands a man known to many as Chukwuma, the Good Wind, Prince Nicholas Ukachukwu, the flag bearer of the All Progressives Congress, billionaire-industrialist, philanthropist, and relentless advocate of grassroots politics. Now, his promise or his manifesto, which he's selling to the people, is to build industrial parks, ignite grassroots mobilization, and create jobs for the restless youth of Anambra. Now, for decades, Anambra's heartbeat has been the commerce. From Onitsha's great markets to Nnewi's auto workshops, enterprise flows in the blood of the people of Anambra. But Chukwuma asks, can we do more, or can he do more? Can he manufacture exports and power Africa's economy from their own homeland, which is Anambra? Now, his answer is the promise of industrial parks, purpose-built zones where electricity never fails, where roads link straight to markets and ports, where investors and securities will actually not bear for support under a tense atmosphere. Now, his dreams of an auto city in Nnewi, where young engineers will build vehicles that carry Nigeria or Made in Nigeria brand. He envisions an agro-industrial hub in Urumba and Anambra West, where farmers become exporters of cash crop produce. Now, he speaks of an Onitsha inland port, a gateway that transforms its traders into international merchants. Now, these perks, might we say, will they emerge as monuments of concrete? Will they emerge as living engines of prosperity? These are rhetorics which we need to ask ourselves upon the manifesto of the APC candidates. Factories buzzing with apprentices trained, families lifted out of poverty. These are the calls from the Chukwuma vision that Anambra must not only buy and sell, it must actually build, produce, and lead. Now, Nicholas Ukachukwu has never been a politician of glass offices. From my own point of view, he has actually been distant from the podiums. His story is one of grassroots mobilization from ward meetings of the Osumei. We could see that evidently in the by-elections in Anambra South, to the village squares of Ogwata. He believes power begins not in the capital, but in the community. In his manifesto, every ward becomes a center of governance. Youth and women alike, their groups will not just be voters, they will be partners in the decision-making process. Local leaders, market unions, and town unions will be empowered to drive developmental projects. His vision is that every ward in Anambra will have its own development council backed by state resources to decide. Now, a bowl here, a market there, a school repaired. It's actually a case of power to the people, not actually locked in the corridors of the center of Anambra State, which is Awka. Now, through grassroots mobilizations, Ukachukwu promised a government that listens, but not only lectures, calling for politics of belonging, where no community is too small, no citizen is too distant, and if any Anambra is to rise, he says, every village, every ward must stand tall. But perhaps his loudest call is to the youth who are restless, ambitious, and likewise impatient. Anambra's greatest treasure is not about oil or gas, but the minds and hands of its young people rather. Yet, many are roaming the streets jobless, their energy untapped, and their talents duly unrecognized. Ukachukwu's manifestos speak directly to them. Industrial parks will provide technical apprenticeships and factory jobs. Grassroots councils will fund small-scale businesses and young entrepreneurs. ICT hubs not left out will also give coders and innovators the tools to compete globally. He pledges a youth empowerment fund to support ideas from villages to cities, from agriculture to fintech. He dreams of turning touts into technicians and wanderers into workers, hustlers into heroes. Words of Marble here, in his own words, a youth without a work or a job is a danger to himself and to society. But a youth with a job is a pride to his family and the hope of his state. And in the state here in question, Anambra State. In this journey, the Chukwuma vision carries a unique weapon, the handshake from Abuja, the presidential handshake to be precise. On a bright day before cameras, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu himself placed the APC flag in his hands, urging him to deliver Anambra. This symbolism is more than a gesture, if you will agree. It is a bridge to federal roads, federal power projects, federal funds. Ukachukwu argues that Anambra must no longer be isolated, but plugged into the center to draw resources, influence of our people, with Abuja at his back. Now, he says the impossible becomes possible. But the road will not be easy. Against him stands the incumbent governor, Charles Soludo, a disruptor with Obi's halo, which is actually George Moghalu, and a coalition outside the grassroots, which is Chuma Nwosu. Critics begin to whisper, can wealth alone win election? Can Abuja's blessings outweigh local loyalties? Can industrial parks rise from paper to steel? These are questions of voters or from voters which will actually weigh down in the elections. Yet the Chukwuma vision's gamble is clear. Anambra people may probably be tired of promises. If he can convince them that billions or his billions can actually build factories, that his federal handshake can unlock resources, and his grassroots model will empower the forgotten, then probably the wins indeed will actually be in his favor. Join us shortly as we take on George Moghalu of the Labour Party and Chuma Nwosu of the ADC.
Anambra people should trust me because of my transparency in business credibility. I have been in business for 31 years and I have my partners all over there. I have dealt with almost all the banks in Nigeria, including Central Bank, and none of them has found me wanting. So I expect my people to trust me based on my past records of transparency.
You're welcome back. Now on to the Reformers Road. George Moghalu and Chuma Nwosu, two voices which are actually rising above the chorus of promises from other candidates from other political parties. George Moghalu of the Labour Party and Chuma Nwosu of the African Democratic Congress. Their messages are not just about flamboyance, but discipline, integrity, and innovation. Now we walk through their manifestos, visions that actually call for competence, clean governance, and the rebirth of a restless state. Now, for over 4 decades, George Moghalu has been in the backseat of Anambra politics. Once a national auditor of the All Progressives Congress, later a managing director of Nigerian Inland Waters Authority. He has carried files, not actually flags of political parties. His message is simple. Governance is not a carnival. Governance is competence. Now, his manifesto begins with competence. Meritocracy over mediocrity. Every commissioner, every advisor, every head of agency will be appointed not by godfathers, but by track record. Hence the meritocracy here. He promises a cabinet where engineers design roads, not contractors, where teachers reform education, not politicians, where technocrats lead ministries, not loyalists. Now his pledge is government by the best minds of the people of Anambra. Then comes his second creed, fiscal discipline. He recalls budgets being squandered, allocations which are actually been misused, a whole lot of maladministration, projects abandoned. In his own words, the treasury, he says, is not a private vault, but a sacred trust. Moghalu vows that every naira spent will be accounted for, zero tolerance for frivolous spending, audited budgets, quarterly financial reports, transparent procurement systems, promising further to publish the state's accounts online, accessible to every citizen. Now, might we be observatory? This is a feature that has not been palpably evident in Nigerian governance system, where expenditure is being tabled online for public access. Waste will actually die if this is actually brought up, and corruption will starve. Discipline will also reign. Now, but competence and discipline are not empty, or are just empty without action. So I will key into what he has declared a mission of infrastructure catch-up, roads forgotten, communities in Anambra West, flyovers and bypasses to unclog Onitsha's chaos, a power reinforcement plan to guarantee industrial clusters in Nnewi and Awka, hospitals equipped with scanners, not excuses, schools with digital labs, not leaking roofs. Now, he frames it bluntly. Anambra has been running, but slowly. We must catch up with Lagos, Rivers, and the global stage. Apparently, George's manifesto is not poetry, if you'll agree. It's a balance sheet and work plan. Supporters call him a man of discipline and steady hands. Critics call him the quieter of Nigerians' loud politics. But his bet might be simple if we choose to gamble in that similar fate. If Moghalu represents competence, Chuma Nwosu of the ADC represents cleansing, like I mentioned earlier, upon this second phase of the show. A grassroots reformist, he enters the race not as a billionaire or a power broker, but a candidate of clean governance and citizens' oversight. Chuma Nwosu's first pledge, clean governance. He says that Anambra's future cannot be built on leaking roofs if the treasury itself is leaking. He promises a radical anti-corruption war at the state level, lifestyle audits for public officers, procurement processes, and live stream. Contracts open for public scrutiny. Now, every ministry will be forced into transparency, every official held accountable. He speaks of a public integrity office. How will this be attained? An independent watchdog to investigate abuse of office, empowered not by politicians, but by the people. Easier said than done. If a government is clean, he argues, everything else becomes possible. But Nwosu is not only cleansing, he is creating. His manifesto envisions tech-driven jobs. For Anambra, tech seems to be the sole mantra of all these candidates for the restless youth. Now, beyond Nollywood, beyond trading, he dreams of a Silicon Valley of the East, incubation hubs in Awka, coding boot camps in Nnewi, app labs in Onitsha, a state-backed venture fund for young innovators, partnerships with global tech firms to make Anambra a center of African software outsourcing. He declared, as far back as the 1980s, the trader of the 1980s was the pride of Anambra. Now, the 2020s, the coder is actually the new pride. Thirdly, Nwosu speaks of citizens' oversight. He proposes a civic portal where the people of Anambra can track projects in real time. The borehole in Ihiala, the classroom in Ayemolum, the health center in Dunukofia. Citizens say we'll upload photos, verify progress, and flag fraud, which is typical of any check and balance system. He envisions participatory budgeting, communities deciding their own priorities, not imposed by the capital or power, he insists, must flow upward from the citizen, not downward from the government. Now, Chuma Nwosu is not the loudest name in the race. Without a broadened chest and braggadocious features, without Abuja blessings, he faces an uphill battle. But his voice carries a moral weight, might we call or recall. A call for integrity in a system addicted to corruption. To some, he's the underdog. To others, he's the conscience of the ballot. His gamble is the Anambra's educated youth, his professionals abroad or technocrats abroad, its weary masses at home, may rally behind clean hands over heavy pockets. And so, two visions stand side by side for the people of Anambra with similar ideologies. George Moghalu of the Labour Party, his creed of competence, discipline of the treasury, and urgency of infrastructure catch-up. and that of Chuma Nwosu of the ADC, the creed of clean governance, the war against corruption, and the rise of tech-driven jobs and the watchful eyes of citizens. In totality or in entirety, we have different men, different political parties, different ideologies, yet one call, the number one seat of the light of the nation, Anambra State. I've been your host, Odiawa AI on Viewpoint. Keep up with us as we monitor the happenings building up against the Anambra gubernatorial election. Thanks for watching.